Yes, because we were doing West Side Story, and the girl from the Ursuline, who was playing Maria, main part, had a sort of sudden conniption fit plus breakdown and couldn't do it at the end. Said, I can't go on, I'm not well, you know. We thought, oh my God, we're going to have to cancel, you know, literally about 2 days before the show, sold all the tickets. And Janine Dennemont said, I love acting as a hobby, I will memorise the part. And she did. Not only did she remember, she said the unfortunate thing is I can't actually sing. Was to memorise the part, acted it all out with the boy playing Tony, who funnily enough was a member of her A-level English group. All her songs were sung by Bob Rathbone's wife, Ola, in the orchestra through a microphone. And many people said that after a second or two they forgot about that, you know, somewhere, you know. So, I mean, it was fine, you know, and it worked. And she was lovely, and she went on to teach in St Thomas, oh, where is she now? That school just off Sloane Square. Well, probably when we were doing a Greek play, The Curse of Thebes, which I'd cobbled together two plays, Crayon and Oedipus Rex, into one. I was sort of slightly annoyed all the way through, actually, because we had Ursuline girls in it who compared it unfavourably to Kings's Twelfth Night, which they had friends in. The messenger comes out onto that stage and is supposed to say, people of Thebes, the king, unable to bear the tragedy anymore, has blinded himself, for he cannot look on the world again, or whatever. And the guy playing Oedipus was already in the wings with a couple of knitting needles, a couple of spring, you know, some sort of pickled onions on the end, dipped in red blood, you know. His eye sockets red with black things over them to indicate that where the eyes had been torn out, and blood all down his front, ready to come on, blinded. But the messenger, instead of saying, people of Thebes, here is the king blinded, came out and said nothing. And he stood at the audience with his eyes, and then he suddenly said, shit! He had 8 shits. And the other members of staff and I who were producing said, oh, we've got to get him off, we've got to get him off. But we couldn't because he was right in the middle of the hall. And he suddenly started a speech. People of Thebes, the king has gone to Apollo, to the shrine, to seek the opinion at Delphi. And I said, oh my God, he's gone back. He's gone back about 20 minutes. My God, what are we going to do? And the king said, what am I going to do? I said, well, you're not blind anymore. We've got to go back. Give me the pickled onions. Tore the things out of his eyes, you know. And I said, put on your other thing without blood on. We'll just go back. And at the end, I sort of lay on the floor with my head in my hands, sobbing. Several people came up and I said, oh my God. They said, what's wrong? And I said, well, didn't you notice? They said, no, what's something wrong? I thought, yeah, it's quite interesting that. A, they probably all thought the shits was just sort of strong Greek language translated into English, you know. And B, they probably didn't expect it to make sense anyway. It's like Shakespeare, you know. You just listen, really. Another one was probably during Snow White, which I wrote, an early one back in the 70s. We had a king from the north of England, and I hadn't realised at the time that his costume was bulging out everywhere. We padded him out, and that out of his fly buttons was a long sort of shirt, you know, white thing sticking out, and people began laughing in the audience, and he then began ad-libbing terribly. You know, what are you looking at, you dirty boogers? And so, oh my God! And in the same show, realising it was probably a mistake to have made the prince gay, because you see, he said, oh, I don't want to kiss you, Snow White, I don't like women, you know, etc. And then eventually, and I don't like kissing dead bodies either, I'm not into necrophilia, dear, you know, etc. And he bent over and he fell on top of her in the coffin and the lid slammed shut. No, dear old Mike Holman was a great one for keeping an eye on things. I mean, we were doing Pirates of Penzance, that production in 2003, and we were all doing a scene where the pirates were fighting the police with real swords, because I'd managed to borrow quite a few swords. They were clashing away, and Father Holman came whizzing into the hall. Are they real swords? And I said, yeah, I was lucky. I managed to get about 10 of them. And he said, they must be confiscated at once. And he grabbed them all and took them to his office. And we had to substitute for plastic, so there was a clash of cold plastic, unfortunately, during the show. Because of course that then changed when Father Porter took over, because his whole tenet was to, you know, make it as realistic as possible. So we had swords galore and daggers, and, you know, and people jumping off heights on things. Well, Bob Rathbone, of course, I've done 37 years with, you know. I mean, I used to like working with dear old Lomas, did 14 plays with him. Father Porter was a great colleague to work with because he had absolutely no worries about spending money. I mean, I remember we were doing Madness of King George, and he said, "Don't you think, Simon?" He said the equerries standing at the door there would look better with swords. And I said, "Yeah, they probably would actually. I mean, I've got a couple of swords." And he said, "What are they?" And I said, "Well, one of them is a First World War sword, officer's sword, belonged to my grandfather. And I've got a sort of 19th century." He said, "No, they're completely wrong. They must be period right for George III." And I said, "Oh, right, okay." And he said, "Leave it to me, I'll look on eBay." And he looked on eBay and spent about 200 quid buying, because he never worried about spending money, buying these two swords, which these boys wore for about 5 minutes, you know, in the doorway, and they're still in our cupboard, never been used since. And he had a sort of wonderfully open sort of sense of, you know, well, if it costs, you know, 10,000 to build a set, so what, you know, it's worth it, the art. HMS Pinafore, 3 or 4 years ago, was great because it worked so beautifully well. Aisling, the picture of it up there actually, and her cast. No, I mean, I don't think anybody got cross during that. um, I particularly liked some of those ones in the beginning of the 2000s, like Pirates, although actually it was, I mean, there's always something tiresome about them. I mean, I quite like the recent one, Evita. I think if I had to pick one, probably 40 years on, 2004 version. Probably.